The twin suns were high in the sky, throwing long shadows over the dusty streets of the alien marketplace. The stalls were filled with bright colors, fresh fruits, shining metals, fabrics that shimmered like liquid light. Voices filled the air, merchants shouting prices, buyers arguing, children running with small bags of food. To most, the marketplace was alive, full of opportunity. But to Rosira, the alien widow, it felt like a cruel place. She walked slowly, her long cloak ragged at the edges. Dust clung to her feet. Her small child, a thin boy with wide, frightened eyes, clutched her hand tightly. His stomach growled loudly, but he stayed silent, afraid of drawing more stares. People already stared at them. Whispers followed. Cold, eyes mocking laughs. Rosira's voice was weak, but she forced it out again and again. "Please, I just need a job, any job." At one stall, a merchant polishing golden cups looked at her. His face twisted in disgust. "You again? Go away, widow. You bring bad luck. My customers don't want your shadow near their goods." Her son lowered his head, ashamed. Rosira's lips trembled, but she bowed slightly and stepped back. The crowd moved around them like they were invisible, or worse, like they were already dead. She tried again at another stall where a woman sold bright blue fruits. "I can clean, I can carry, I can help with anything. Please, just one chance." The woman's eyes hardened. "You think I would hire you? Your husband died in the mines because of his weakness. Now you want to curse my stall too? Leave." The alien widow's heart sank deeper. Each word was like a stone thrown at her. Her child finally whispered, "Mother, let's go home." But she had no home. Only a broken hut on the edge of the colony, with no food, no warmth. Going back would mean another night of hunger. She could not give up. Not yet. She lifted her chin and forced herself forward. The marketplace smelled of spices, oil, and smoke. But for Rosira, the strongest smell was despair. She saw a group of men laughing near a tavern door. She swallowed her pride and approached. "Please, sirs, I can work in kitchens, I can wash floors, I can—" Before she finished, one of them spat near her feet. "Work? A widow like you? No one wants a broken thing." His friends roared with laughter. Her child squeezed her hand, pulling her away, his small body shaking. She felt his tears wet her fingers. Rosira stopped in the middle of the square. The voices of the market blurred. She felt dizzy. For a moment, she thought she would fall. Was this her fate? To beg until she collapsed? To watch her child starve, while others ate? Her mind drifted back to the past, when her husband was alive. He had been strong once, working in the deep mines. They had lived in a small home, not rich, but together. She remembered laughter, warmth, her son with food in his hands. Then the day of the mine collapse came. She remembered the screams, the smoke, the silence when he never returned. From that day, everything had changed. Her people called her cursed. A widow with no man was seen as useless. And now, no one wanted to hire her. "Please." Her voice broke as she tried one last time. She stood near a pottery stall, her hands shaking. "I don't want charity. I will work for food. I will work for less than food. Please, my child needs to eat." The merchant there only turned his back. Her son tugged at her cloak, whispering, "Mother, don't cry." But tears already rolled down her cheeks. She quickly wiped them away, not wanting him to see her weakness. The sun shifted, the light turning harsher. The crowd seemed to grow louder, yet lonelier. Rosira felt trapped, as if the walls of the marketplace were closing. And at that moment she realized something. Not a single person wanted to give her a chance. Not one hand had reached out. She was not just poor, she was unwanted. The child coughed, weak and tired. Rosira bent down, hugging him close. Her arms were thin, but her love was strong. She whispered to him, "I will not stop, I promise you I will find a way." Yet inside, her promise felt like a lie. Her strength was breaking. Her hope was fading. And then, her eyes caught something strange. At the far edge of the marketplace, where the crowd thinned, someone was standing still, watching. Not like the others, not with disgust or laughter, just watching quietly. The figure was tall, broad-shouldered, different from the rest, not one of her people. The clothes were strange, rough but strong. The skin, the face, human. Rosira froze. A human? Here? Her heart pounded. She didn't know why, but for the first time that day she felt a spark. A small spark of something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The marketplace around her kept moving, shouting, laughing. But in that moment, all she could see were those eyes watching her, and deep inside she wondered, why? Why would a human look at her when no one else even cared she was alive? The next morning, Rosira woke before the suns rose. The hut where she and her child slept was cold, its roof cracked and walls thin. The boy shivered beside her, his breathing soft but restless. She brushed his hair gently and whispered, "Stay strong, little one. Today will be different." But inside she was afraid. Yesterday the market had given her nothing but shame, yet she could not stop trying. Hunger left no choice. She wrapped her cloak tightly, lifted her son onto his feet, and stepped outside. The colony's streets were narrow and sharp with dust. The wind carried smells of food from distant bakeries, smells that stabbed at her stomach. She ignored the pain and kept moving. As the suns rose higher, she reached the marketplace again. But this time, instead of begging in the crowd, she went door to door along the outer lanes, homes, shops, small businesses. If no one wanted her, in public maybe someone in secret would let her work. She knocked on the first door, a wooden frame painted in bright colors. An older woman opened it, frowning the moment she saw Rosira. "Yes? What do you want?" Rosira lowered her head. Respectfully, I can work for you. Cleaning, washing, cooking. I only ask for food, please, one chance." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Why would I trust you? A widow has no luck, no strength. You'll only bring misery to my house." Before Rosira could speak again, the door slammed shut with a loud crack. Her son flinched at the sound. She whispered, "It's all right, let's try another." At the second house, a man opened the door halfway, peeking out. Rosira explained again, her voice trembling. He shook his head quickly. "No. My neighbors would mock me if I hired you. Go." The door closed even faster this time. One after another it happened again. She begged. They refused. Some shouted. Some laughed. Some did not even bother to answer. Her son tugged at her cloak after the fifth house. "Mother, maybe we should stop." But Rosira shook her head. "No. We will keep trying. Someone will understand." Still, each rejection was a wound. Her pride was gone, her dignity shattered, yet her love for her child pushed her forward. Finally, she reached a large, stone house. The sign above the door showed it was a tailor's shop. She knew the tailor once, he had been a friend of her husband. Perhaps here she would find kindness. She knocked softly. The door opened and the tailor's eyes met hers. For a moment, his face softened. "Rosira," he said quietly. I heard about your husband. I am sorry." Her eyes filled with tears, but she forced herself to speak clearly. "I need work, please, anything you can give me. My son is hungry." The tailor sighed. "I wish, but I cannot. My customers already whisper about me. If they see you working here, they will leave. My business will die." Rosira's hope broke again. "But I can hide. I can sew in the back room. No one will see me." He shook his head sadly. "No, Rosira, I cannot risk it." And he closed the door slowly as if ashamed. Her knees weakened, but she refused to fall. Her son slipped his hand into hers, his eyes wide with sadness. "Why do they hate us, Mother?" She could not answer. How could she explain to a child that her people saw her as a curse, that without a husband she was less than nothing? The suns moved higher in the sky. The heat burned and her feet ached from walking. But she kept knocking, kept begging. Each time the answer was the same: no, no, no. Doors slammed shut again and again, louder than before, echoing in her heart. By midday she stood in the middle of the lane, her face pale, her lips dry. The boy leaned against her leg, too tired to walk. She wanted to scream, to fall, to give up. But then she remembered the eyes from yesterday, that human, standing at the edge of the marketplace, watching her. He had not laughed. He had not turned away. He had simply looked. Different from the rest, the memory gave her a tiny spark of strength. She thought, maybe he was real. Maybe today I'll see him again. She carried her son back into the busy part of the marketplace. The crowd was just as cruel, voices sharp, eyes full of judgment. She asked again, louder now, her voice breaking, "Please, I just need a job. I will work for anything." The crowd ignored her, but one merchant shouted back, "No one wants you here. Leave before we call the guards." Her son cried softly, burying his face against her cloak. Rosira stood frozen, her body shaking. She could not move forward. She could not move back. All the doors had slammed. All the paths had closed. She felt trapped in a cage, built of rejection and shame. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him, the human, standing again near the edge of the square. His eyes were on her, calm, steady, not mocking, not cruel. Her heart thudded in her chest. The sound of the crowd faded. All she saw was that one figure. This time he did not just watch, he stepped forward. The noise of the marketplace faded into the background as Rosira watched the human step closer. For a moment she thought she was imagining him, a trick of her tired mind. Humans were rare here, so rare that many in her colony had never seen one. Yet here he was, real, solid, walking with quiet strength through the crowd. The merchants stopped shouting. The buyers stopped moving. Every head turned toward him. Whispers rippled through the air. A human. What is he doing here? Why would he come to this market? Stay away, they're dangerous. But Rosira could not look away. His clothes were worn, simple but clean. His boots left heavy prints in the dust. His face was rugged, shadowed with stubble. Yet his eyes, those eyes, were not like anyone else's. They held no disgust, no laughter, no pity, only focus, only calm. Rosira's son gripped her cloak tighter, his little body trembling. "Mother," he whispered. "He's looking at us." "Yes," Rosira said softly, her own voice shaking. "At us." The human stopped, a few steps away. The crowd gave him space, pulling back like waves retreating from the shore. He stood tall, his shadow stretching long over the ground. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The marketplace, once so loud, was silent. Then the human's voice broke the stillness. It was deep, steady, and carried a strange warmth. "Why are you begging for work in a place that does not want you?" The question struck Rosira like thunder. No one had ever asked her that. They had only pushed her away, insulted her, cursed her. She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. "Because I have no choice. My son must eat, and no one else will help." The human studied her for a long moment. His eyes did not waver. "What can you do?" The simple question shocked her. No one had ever cared about her skills, her hands, her strength. They only saw her as a burden. Her heart raced as she tried to speak clearly. "I can cook, I can clean, I can mend clothes, I can work long hours. I will do anything." Her words tumbled out like water from a broken jar. The crowd began to laugh again, their courage returning now that the silence was broken. "Human, don't waste your time. She's worthless. She'll curse you too. Hire anyone but her." Rosira lowered her head, ashamed, waiting for the human to turn away. Surely he would listen to them just like everyone else. But he did not move. He only tilted his head, watching her as if the crowd did not exist. Then he spoke again, his tone quiet but firm. "Do you want charity? Or do you want work? Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. Work, she whispered quickly. I don't want gifts. I want to earn. I only want to give my son food with my own hands. For the first time in many years, she felt her voice grow strong. The human's lips curved, not into a laugh, but into something rare. Approval. He nodded once. Then you'll work for me. Gasps filled the marketplace. Merchants shouted, in outrage, He's mad! Taking a widow? A curse will follow him home. Humans don't understand. He'll regret this. But Rosira barely heard them. Her heart pounded so loudly it drowned everything else. She stared at him, hardly believing his words. You will hire me? Yes, the human said simply. If you want the chance. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them away. She did not want to appear weak. She nodded quickly, clutching her son's hand. Yes, I want it. I will work hard, I swear it. The human stepped closer. He extended his hand, large, calloused, steady. No one else had offered her a hand since her husband's death. For a moment she hesitated, afraid this was another cruel trick. But his eyes, they told her it was real. With shaking fingers, she placed her hand in his. His grip was firm, grounding her like a tree root holding against a storm. For the first time in years, she felt safe. The crowd murmured angrily. Some spat on the ground, but the human ignored them all. He turned slightly, motioning for her to follow. What is your name? He asked. Rosira, she whispered. I am Daniel, he replied. Come, you and your son will start today. Her legs trembled as she followed him out of the square. The merchants shouted after them, warning, mocking, threatening. But Rosira did not look back. Her son clung to her side, his eyes wide with wonder. Mother, he whispered as they walked. Is he really going to help us? Rosira glanced at the human's broad back, walking steadily ahead of them. Her voice broke as she answered. Yes, for the first time, someone is. The suns burned above, the crowd faded behind, and for the first time in endless days of despair, Rosira felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Daniel led Rosira and her son away from the noisy heart of the market. His steps were steady, unhurried, and strong, while hers were uncertain and shaky. The boy clung to her cloak as if afraid someone might pull them back into the crowd. Behind them, the voices of merchants still echoed, mocking, warning, spitting curses. But as Daniel walked forward, no one dared to step in his way. His presence was like a shield. And for the first time in days, Rosira felt the sharp sting of insults fall quieter. They turned down a quieter lane, where the smell of spices and smoke faded, replaced by the simple scent of dust and stone. Daniel stopped in front of a small building with wooden doors and a faded sign. The edges of the building were patched with rough metal plates, and smoke rose gently from a chimney. This is my place, Daniel said calmly. Rosira stared at it. It was not grand, not rich, but compared to her broken hut, it looked strong and safe. Her heart pounded with nervousness. She whispered, Why would you choose me? You don't even know me. Daniel turned, his sharp eyes studying her. Because I saw the way you asked. You didn't beg for food. You begged for work. There is a difference. His words cut deep, striking something inside her. For so long she had been treated as a beggar, a burden. But he had seen her differently. She blinked hard, trying to hold back tears. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. She hesitated, but the boy tugged her hand, whispering, Mother, let's go. Together, they followed. Inside, the building was warm and smelled faintly of wood and oil. A large table was covered with tools, metal scraps, and small machines. Along the walls, shelves held jars, cloth, and boxes. It was a workshop, busy, a little messy but alive. Daniel motioned to a chair. Sit. Rosira lowered herself slowly, holding her son close. She still didn't trust her voice. Her heart thudded in her chest. Daniel stood across from her, arms folded. I travel often. I fix machines. I sell goods. I sometimes help build ships. But when I leave, this place is empty. It needs hands. Cleaning. Organizing. Preparing small things. Can you do that? Rosira nodded quickly. Yes, I can do all of that. He leaned forward slightly. Then you will work here. I'll give you food, shelter, and a fair share of earnings. In return, you give me honesty and hard work. Nothing less. Do you accept? The words echoed in her ears. Food, shelter, work. It sounded like a dream. But dreams often betrayed her. What if it was a trick? What if he planned to use her, then cast her aside? Her fear spilled out. Why would you trust me? Everyone says I'm cursed. If you take me in, they will mock you. They will say you are a fool. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes didn't waver. Let them mock. Their words don't feed me. Their fear doesn't fix machines. I don't care what they say. Her son's small voice broke the silence. Mother, please, say yes. Rosira looked at the boy's thin face, his eyes wide with hunger and hope. She couldn't deny him. Slowly, she nodded. Yes, I accept. Daniel extended his hand again. She placed hers in his. The grip was firm, steady, final. It felt like a binding promise. At that moment, footsteps and whispers came from outside. Curious neighbors had followed. Through the window, faces pressed to the glass, eyes full of judgment. Some sneered, some laughed. One voice shouted, "Human, you'll regret this." Rosira flinched, ready to hide. But Daniel walked calmly too. The door pushed it open and looked at the small crowd. His voice carried like thunder. She works for me now. If anyone has a problem with that, they can bring it to me directly. The crowd fell silent. None dared step forward. Slowly, they faded back into the street, their whispers retreating like dying flames. Daniel closed the door and returned to the table. He looked at Rosira again. From this moment, you are not begging. You are working. Do you understand? Her eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were not from shame. She nodded quickly. Yes, I understand. Her son smiled faintly, his thin lips curving for the first time in many days. He whispered, "Mother, we are safe now." Rosira pulled him close, pressing her forehead to his. Safe. The word felt strange, almost unreal, but she held on to it with all her strength. Daniel turned back to his tools, speaking without looking at them. Tomorrow you will begin. Rest tonight. There is bread and stew in the kitchen. Eat, then sleep. You'll need your strength. Bread. Stew. The words alone were enough to make Rosira's body tremble with gratitude. She whispered, Thank you, Daniel." But he didn't answer. He only kept working, the sound of metal scraping against metal filling the room. Rosira realized then, he was not a man of many words. He was a man of actions, and his actions had just given her life a chance to begin again. Morning light crept into the small workshop through narrow windows, painting the dusty floor with golden stripes. Rosira sat awake long before the suns had risen fully. She had hardly slept. Each time she closed her eyes, the same thoughts circled. This cannot be real. He will change his mind. They will come and drag me out. But each time she looked at her son sleeping peacefully on the small cot Daniel had given them, she forced herself to stay calm. For the first time in months, the boy's face was not twisted with hunger. He had eaten bread and stew before sleeping, and his little stomach had been full. That memory alone gave Rosira the strength to rise. She quietly washed her face with the cool water Daniel had left, tied her torn cloak around her waist, and stood in the center of the workshop. She wanted to be ready when he appeared. The door creaked open soon after. Daniel entered carrying a small wooden box filled with spare parts. He glanced at Rosira, his expression as calm as ever. "You're awake early." Rosira bowed her head quickly. "I wanted to be ready." Good, he said simply, setting the box on the table. Then let's begin. He showed her the workshop slowly, pointing out each corner. The shelves where the jars needed cleaning. The tools that must be kept sharp and oiled. The scraps of metal sorted by size. The kitchen where pots needed scrubbing. The floor where dust collected quickly. Rosira listened carefully, nodding at every word. This was not charity. This was real work, and she wanted to prove herself. As she swept, scrubbed, and polished, Daniel worked at his table, repairing a broken machine. He did not hover over her or doubt her every move. He simply let her work. The silence was broken only by the scrape of her broom and the steady clink of his tools. For Rosira, it was strange. She was used to suspicious eyes, mocking whispers, or doors slamming in her face. Now she worked in peace, her hands busy, her heart steadying. Her son followed her quietly, sometimes handing her a cloth, sometimes carrying small scraps to the bin. Each time he looked up at Daniel, his eyes widened in awe. Daniel was like no one they had ever met. Firm, silent, but safe. By midday, the workshop already looked different. The shelves were neatly stacked, the floor shone with a faint glow, the tools hung in rows ready for use. Daniel finally paused his work, glancing around. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, Rosira felt her chest tighten. "You work well," he said simply. The word struck her deeper than she expected. When had anyone last praised her? She could not even remember. She bowed her head again. "Thank you. I will not disappoint you." He gave a small nod, then motioned to the table. "Eat." On the table sat a loaf of bread and a pot of stew. He must have prepared earlier. Rosira froze. In her old life, she would have served others first, but now he was offering her food as if she belonged here. Daniel noticed her hesitation. His voice carried no softness, only certainty. "You work here. You eat here." Her son's eyes glowed as he climbed onto the bench. Rosira finally allowed herself to sit. The bread was warm, the stew rich with flavor. She had not tasted food like this in years. Her hands shook as she ate, her throat tightening with every bite. Daniel ate silently with them, not treating them as beggars, not separating himself. They shared the same table. After the meal, Rosira washed the bowls quickly. She returned to her work with renewed strength. She dusted the windows, patched a torn cloth on the shelf, and even fixed a cracked handle on a broom. She wanted to show Daniel that she was more than desperate hands. She was capable, but outside the whispers had not ended. From the street, neighbors paused as they passed the workshop. Some muttered cruel words loud enough for her to hear. "Look at the human. Feeding a widow like she's his equal. He'll regret wasting food on her. She'll ruin him like she ruined her husband." Rosira's hands trembled as she scrubbed the window. Shame pressed heavy on her chest. Would Daniel grow tired of the insults? Would he cast her out when it became too much? She glanced nervously at him, waiting for anger or frustration. But Daniel only kept working at his table, his face calm. The whispers outside might as well not exist. At that moment, Rosira realized something powerful. He truly did not care what they said. He had chosen to trust her, and their words could not change his decision. That night, after the sun set, Rosira tucked her son into the small cot again. He smiled faintly, his eyes heavy with sleep. "Mother," he whispered. "Today felt different." Rosira brushed his hair back, tears welling in her eyes. Yes, today was different. As she stepped back into the workshop, she found Daniel, still at his table working by lamplight. She wanted to thank him again, to tell him how much this meant, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she quietly returned to her chores, wiping the last of the dust from the shelves. It was not just work, it was dignity, something she thought she had lost forever. For the first time in many years, Rosira did not feel like a shadow in the marketplace. She felt like a person again, and deep in her heart, Though she tried to hide it, a thought began to grow. Perhaps this is not just work. Perhaps this is the beginning of a new life. The days passed, and Rosira's work became part of the workshop's rhythm. Each morning she cleaned, cooked, and kept things in order. Her son helped where he could, carrying tools, sweeping corners. Daniel rarely spoke more than a few words, but he never once doubted her. His quiet nods when he saw her work meant more to her than the loudest praises of others, but not everyone accepted this new life. Outside, the whispers grew sharper. Neighbors shook their heads whenever she walked to fetch water. Merchants spat near her feet when she passed the market. She ignored them, clinging to the small safety Daniel had given her. Yet safety, she would soon learn, was fragile. One night, when the suns had dipped low and shadows covered the streets, Rosira sat by the small fire in the kitchen with her son. Daniel was away, called to fix a machine on the edge of the colony. He had warned her to lock the doors, to stay inside. She had promised she would, but promises were sometimes tested. The first sound was faint, a shuffle outside, followed by a low whisper. Rosira's heart leapt. She quickly moved to the door, pressing her ear against it. More footsteps, more voices. Human keeps a widow here, a voice sneered. He thinks he's better than us. Let's show him what happens. Take what we can, burn the rest. Rosira's blood turned cold. Thieves. Her son clung to her leg, his small body trembling. Mother, I'm scared. She forced herself to stay calm. Her hand shook, but her voice was steady. Stay behind me. Don't move. The door rattled, then slammed open. 3 figures entered, faces covered with cloth, carrying knives and clubs. Their eyes gleamed with cruelty. Well, well, one said, stepping inside. The cursed widow herself, guarding the human's house like a dog. Another laughed. She's nothing. Grab what you can. Rosira's heart pounded. She had no weapon, no strength like Daniel. But this workshop was not just Daniel's. It was her chance, her son's only hope. She could not let them destroy. She grabbed the nearest thing she could reach, a heavy iron pan from the kitchen. Her hands trembled, but she raised it high. Leave now, she said, her voice firm despite the fear in her chest. You will not touch this place. The thieves laughed harder. Or what? You'll hit us with that pan? One lunged forward, swinging his club toward her. Instinct took over. She swung the pan with all her strength. It struck his arm with a loud clang. He howled in pain, stumbling back. The other 2 rushed forward, but Rosira did not retreat. She moved in front of her son, her body the shield. She swung again, shouting, her voice echoing through the workshop. You will not take this from me. The thieves were stunned. They had expected weakness, tears, begging. Instead, they faced fire. The noise of the struggle carried into the street. Neighbors peered from their windows, whispers spreading like wildfire. The widow is fighting thieves. Alone? One thief growled, Enough of this! He lunged again. Rosira ducked, her cloak ripping as the club missed her. She shoved him with the pan, forcing him back. The third thief, startled, grabbed a small box of tools and ran for the door. The others cursed and followed, limping, clutching their bruises. In moments they were gone, leaving only the sound of Rosira's heavy breathing. She dropped the pan, her arms shaking, her chest heaving. Her son ran to her, hugging her tightly. Mother, you were so brave. But Rosira nearly collapsed. Her knees gave way, and she sank to the floor, trembling. She had been ready to die in that moment, but she had not let them win. When Daniel returned later that night, the neighbors were already whispering in the street, telling the story. He pushed through the crowd, his eyes sharp, his body tense. Inside, he found the door broken, the tools scattered, Rosira sitting on the floor with her son clinging to her side. What happened? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. Rosira looked up, her face pale but her eyes steady. Thieves came. They wanted to take your things. I stopped them. Daniel's eyes moved to the iron pan on the floor, bent slightly from the blows. He picked it up, then looked at her. For the first time, there was something new in his gaze. Not just calm, but respect. You fought them? I had to, Rosira whispered. This is my home now. I couldn't let them destroy it. The silence stretched. Then Daniel placed the pan back on the table, his expression unreadable. Finally, he said, You are stronger than they will ever understand. The words sent a warmth through Rosira's chest, stronger than any praise she had known. For once, she was not just a burden. She was not just a widow. She was someone who had defended what was hers. Her son hugged her tighter, whispering, Mother, you're a hero. Rosira closed her eyes, her body weak, but her heart burning with pride. She had faced her trial and she had not failed. Outside, the whispers of neighbors carried into the night. For the first time, they were not mocking. They were filled with shock and something else, respect. The widow was no longer a shadow. She was a fire they could not put out. The story of the widow who fought thieves spread quickly through the colony. By the next morning, the marketplace was alive with whispers. Some spoke in disbelief. She struck them with her own hands? A widow protecting a human's workshop? Others scoffed, unwilling to admit the truth. She was lucky, that's all. Don't be fooled. She's still cursed. But no matter how they twisted the tale, everyone knew what had happened. Rosira had stood her ground when others would have run. Inside the workshop, Rosira rose early again. Her arms ached from the struggle, and her body was sore, but she moved, with quiet determination. She cleaned the floor where the thieves had left their muddy prints, fixed the tools they had scattered, and set things back in order. Her son followed her, his eyes shining with pride. Mother, he whispered, they'll never call you weak again. She smiled faintly, brushing his hair. Let them call me what they want. We know the truth. When Daniel stepped into the workshop that morning, his boots heavy against the floorboards, Rosira straightened nervously. She wondered if he might see her differently now, not as a worker, but as a troublemaker, someone who attracted danger. Her heart pounded as he set down the sack of supplies he had brought. For a long moment he said nothing. He simply looked around, taking in the clean room, the fixed shelves, the calm order she had restored. Finally, his eyes met hers. You defended this place like it was yours, he said quietly. Rosira lowered her gaze, her hands twisting in her cloak. Because it is yours, and I owe you everything. Daniel shook his head. No, you didn't fight for me. You fought for yourself, for your child, for your home. Her breath caught. Home. That word struck deep. She had not felt it in years. Daniel stepped closer, his voice firm but gentle. Rosira, this is not just a job anymore. You are part of this place. You and your son belong here. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had cried too many times from despair. These tears felt different, warm, almost joyful. You mean, we can stay? Yes, Daniel said. As long as you want. No one will take that from you. Her son ran to Daniel then, clutching his sleeve with small hands. Does that mean we're safe now? Truly safe? Daniel crouched down, meeting the boy's wide eyes. Yes. No one will harm you while I stand. The boy's face lit up with a smile, brighter than Rosira had seen in years. He hugged Daniel tightly, as if he were already part of their family. Rosira watched, her heart heavy with gratitude. She whispered, I don't know how to thank you. Daniel rose, shaking his head. You don't need to. Just keep living. That is thanks enough. Outside, the whispers of neighbors continued, but Rosira no longer feared them. When she walked to fetch water, some still muttered curses, but others now stepped aside. A few even nodded slightly, their eyes avoiding, hers but no longer filled with hate. Respect was slow, but it was coming. Days turned into weeks. The workshop thrived under her care. Customers came, and though some sneered when they saw Rosira, they could not deny the quality of Daniel's work. or the quiet strength of the woman at his side. One evening, as the suns dipped low and the workshop glowed in soft light, Daniel set down his tools and looked at Rosira. She was stitching a torn cloth bag, her son humming softly nearby. The room was peaceful, warm, alive. "You've changed this place," Daniel said. Rosira looked up, startled. "Me?" "Yes. Before it was only a workshop. Now it feels whole." Her throat tightened. She bowed her head, whispering, "All I ever wanted was a chance. And you gave it to me." Daniel's voice grew firm. "No, you earned it. Don't forget that." She met his eyes then, and for the first time, she allowed herself to truly believe it. She was no longer a shadow, no longer unwanted. She was part of something. That night, as she lay on the cot beside her son, Rosira stared at the wooden ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the workshop settling in the dark. For the first time in years, she did not fear tomorrow. Her son whispered sleepily, "Mother, do you think Daniel is like family now?" Rosira smiled in the dark, brushing his hair gently. "Yes," she said softly, "he is." And with that, the weight of years lifted from her shoulders. She was not just a widow, not just a worker. She was a mother, a protector, and now, finally, someone who belonged. In the end, Daniel had not just given her a job. He had given her dignity, safety, and a home, and that was worth more than all the riches in the marketplace.